This time last year, Francisco Ramiro was rescuing people and recovering bodies as a search and rescue volunteer after a 7.1 earthquake struck Mexico City.
The quake that day brought down several buildings to the ground and claimed the lives of more than 200 people. Several hundred structures were left severely damaged, and more than 100,000 people left homeless.
Ya se cumplió un año del terremoto del 19 de septiembre del 2017. Estamos en el 2018 y vamos a ver qué ha hecho el gobierno por salvar al país.
Today, it remains difficult to measure just how much progress has been made to aid the homeless and to rebuild damaged neighborhoods around the city. While the government is reporting that a majority of the homeless have found somewhere new to live, we observe that several homeless camps for earthquake victims remain around the city. As for reconstruction, the Mexican government's National Civil Protection System is reporting that more than 75% of damaged homes have been rebuilt, and that $2 billion in government funds is going into reconstruction, and that millions of dollars more in additional funds have been donated by other countries to help earthquake victims who remain homeless. Though some are accusing the Mexican government of failing to release these funds to help earthquake victims. One of the government's fiercest critics is Carlos Cienfuegos, a longtime and respected search and rescue volunteer. For example, seen here at 25 in 1985 during the horrific 8.0 Mexico City earthquake that killed an estimated 10,000 people. And fast forward to the 2017 earthquake, rescuing citizens and recovering the dead once again around the capital city. Now, 1 year after the 2017 quake, his colleagues say who better to survey reconstruction than Carlos Cienfuegos.
Desgraciadamente, donaron millones de dólares de todo el mundo y el dinero no se ha visto, o sea, no se lo han dado a los damnificados. O sea, existe una corrupción increíble.
Cienfuegos says, in hopes of shedding light on what he says is rampant corruption here, he and his fellow search and rescue volunteer Francisco Ramiro have been returning to areas most heavily damaged, where they're finding that many citizens remain homeless. For example, this apartment complex in the neighborhood of Tlalpan.
Ahora vamos a ir a Tlalpan para que veas toda la cantidad de gente.
Cienfuegos' personal photo collection from the 2017 quake shows how it brought down an entire building here, killing 9 residents inside. Today, Cienfuegos sends a drone up over the same site that shows the building and rubble have been cleared, though many of the building's former inhabitants who survived remain homeless, living just 100 meters away in a homeless camp set up in what used to be the community garden here. In tents and temporary housing provided by international donors such as the Chinese government and a number of foreign aid groups. Homeless residents here outraged, they say, that the Mexican government has failed to help them find more permanent housing by now. Some telling Carlos Cienfuegos they doubt he can do anything to help them at this point.
¿De dónde son ustedes?
Bueno, yo soy del grupo de topos. El señor, cuando yo estuve trabajando aquí en Tlalpan, hasta que saqué la última víctima. Entonces, me hizo un reportaje, entonces me habló por teléfono, viene de Los Ángeles. Y me dice, oye, ya ayudaron a los damnificados, yo no digo, no han hecho nada. Entonces quiere hacerles una entrevista. Quiere entrevistarlos para que vean la realidad. Porque
¿Y
una
qué
cosa es lo
vamos a ganar nosotros?
que se entere la gente que no nos han apoyado a nivel mundial.
Bueno, eso viene el diario. ¿Por qué me graban?
In frustration, the woman tells us to stop filming. Though another resident here, Marisol Arriaga, agrees to share what she says has become of their lives here.
En este jardín, pues hay alrededor de unas 15 familias. La mayoría de ellas son mujeres con niños.
Marisol says most residents here can no longer afford other apartments in this area because the rents have been doubled by private owners of the apartment buildings here after the earthquake struck.
Que antes del sismo oscilaban en 7,500 la renta de un departamento con 2 recámaras. El día de hoy están hasta en 13,000 pesos. Nuestros sueldos no nos dan para eso.
Guadalupe Sanchez says tents donated by international donors are at times so stifling hot inside they're a health risk to her children.
Porque yo tengo, una de mis hijas está enferma, tiene epilepsia, entonces no puedo dejar que le suba la temperatura, tengo que tener algunos cuidados con ella Pues la verdad es algo, una experiencia que yo no hubiera querido que ellas la vivieran. Pues uno como papá quiere la seguridad de una propiedad, ¿no? De un techo para ellos. Y pues que de un momento a otro se quede uno en la calle, pues es algo que yo no hubiera querido para mis hijas.
Her youngest daughter, 16-year-old Andrea, says that with no plumbing of any kind here, they are forced to ask people living in nearby apartment buildings if they can use their bathroom facilities.
Es más difícil cambiarme en la mañana y arreglar. Aquí no hay baños. A veces nos tenemos que ir a bañar a los departamentos o en casa de familiares.
Single mother Alejandra Nava lives here with her 6-year-old son, Gael, who says he still fears another earthquake might come.
No me gusta que tiemble y pues que no se caiga en mi edificio ni...
Gael and his mom live in a donated wooden shack that's only a few square meters in size.
No hay mucho espacio.
No. Son un poquito chiquitas, pero nos ayuda a estar más cómodos que las casas de campaña. Aquí es donde cocinamos. Son parrillas eléctricas porque no podemos tener ¿cómo se llama? De gas. Sueño mío, regresar a mi casa, seguir con mi vida relativamente de antes.
She too, she says, can no longer afford increased rent in this neighborhood, but has chosen to stay here so Gael can keep going to his same school here. He gets by wearing a mismatched pair of donated shoes on his feet.
Meanwhile, in upscale Colonia del Valle, Francisco Ramiro returns to a neighborhood heavily damaged by the earthquake. At the time, he took photos of 2 residential apartment buildings that came down, killing several people in both buildings. 1 year later, the government has cleared both structures, some of the surviving tenants moving to homeless camps, and one of the sites now a public parking lot.
Por ejemplo, antes aquí era unidad habitacional y ahora es un estacionamiento público. El mal uso de los recursos aquí, venden el predio a otras personas y lo compran y ya nada para los damnificados. La gente que perdió su hogar, su vivienda, ya no tiene nada, Mike.
Then there are buildings like this one of privately owned condominiums that suffered serious structural damage when the building next to it collapsed. And today, government inspectors are allowing individual condo owners to return briefly as it's being determined whether this building can be saved.
Condo owner Eva Rosas, a retired banker, has lived here, she says, for 16 years. Several cracks can be seen in the walls of her unit. At the age of 72, she says she doesn't want to be forced to move somewhere else.
Es difícil estar en su casa de uno. No, y sobre todo, no tener la seguridad del lugar donde está uno, de por cuánto tiempo va a estar como está uno en su casa.
Ms. Rosas and other condo owners here have been approached by real estate developers offering to buy them out, to pay them half the value of their units, around $50,000 in cash, so that developers can demolish the buildings to build a shopping mall, says Alejandro Vallarta, whose brother owns a condo here.
Pues ahorita yo calculo que fácilmente este departamento puede valer, como estaba, 2 millones de pesos, una cosa así. Y hay un señor que ofrece 800,000 pesos. Lo que pasa es que quieren comprar el terreno porque es una zona muy buena, es una zona muy comercial.
Lo que te decía, Mike, que lamentablemente hay gente que aprovecha de la desgracia y por eso ahora los vecinos ponen, no se vende ni se renta y está siendo vigilado por el comité de vecinos de la Colonia del Valle. Llegan gente que quiere venir y comprar el predio y construir otra cosa y los damnificados se pierdan su patrimonio, no les importa nada.
Mexican government inspector Alejandro Hernandez tells condo owners Eva Rosas and the others here that if their building cannot be saved, there is a way for them to replace it with a new building. He explains to them that under Mexico's new reconstruction laws passed after the earthquake, Homeowners here have the option of pooling their money together to make a down payment to start construction on a new building here.
The rest of the cost, they're told, would be covered by the contractor building the new building. Now, what does the contractor get in return? He would be allowed to build additional units in the new building that he could then turn around and sell in order to be compensated for his time and materials and the construction workers he employs to build the new building.
Los constructores van a poner lo que es la mano de obra y el material, y los vecinos van a poner lo que es el predio. La ley de reconstrucción que se acaba de aprobar en la Ciudad de México permite que se pueda construir hasta un 35% más de lo que había originalmente. Es decir, si había un edificio con 20 departamentos, pues con esta nueva ley se le va a permitir a lo mejor construir de 25 a lo mejor 30, o sea, 5 departamentos más. Pero esos 5 departamentos más, ¿qué se les va a hacer? Se le va a permitir entonces que estos 5 departamentos la constructora pueda venderlos. ¿Para qué? Para que esta constructora pueda recuperar algo de lo que invirtió. Entonces, así no pierde la constructora, así no pierden los vecinos.
Inspector Hernandez concedes that many residents are concerned this new practice may tempt some contractors to hastily build new buildings to make fast money.
And that government inspectors might be bribed by contractors to condemn buildings that might otherwise be saved.
Sí, la corrupción no nada más es por parte del gobierno, también es por parte de los constructores, porque hemos ido a edificios donde las columnas no le meten suficiente metal, que es lo que me comentan los ingenieros.
For example, beams in the unit of this building failed to prevent a partial collapse of a building residents say was supposed to be earthquake-proof because it was built after the 1985 earthquake, when new laws were passed back then, supposedly to ensure stronger earthquake-proof construction. And yet these beams seem questionable, says resident Enrique Castañeda.
Can you see the material? The original beams look like paper.
Why it's continuing to happen, says Carlos Cienfuegos, is that too many building contractors, in order to increase their profit margin, are using inexpensive, weaker materials so they can pocket the savings for themselves.
Es decir, un edificio te cuesta 30 millones en hacerlo. Lo hacen en 10 y se roban 20. Le pone menos cemento, menos grava, varilla más delgada, menos varillas. O sea, la corrupción es increíble lo que están haciendo.
Cienfuegos says another concern 1 year after the quake is that there remain hundreds of condemned buildings that he says have yet to be demolished by the government. We film one resident who continues living here in his condemned apartment building, even though he's not supposed to under the law. And when you look inside some of these units, you see that residents have resorted in desperation to using planks of wood to prop up ceilings that have begun to collapse in their units. Among dozens of schools destroyed in Mexico City that have yet to be demolished is Enrique Rebsamen Elementary, that made world headlines where more than 20 students were killed.
Pensé que se iba a acabar el mundo.
Georgina Gordenez and Javier Magaña were in the apartment building next to the school when the quake struck.
Este edificio no se le metió más peso y a este edificio la dueña le metió 2 pisos más y mármol, pero además no agarró un ingeniero.
No hay apoyo suficiente.
Sí.
1 year later, they question why the government hasn't done anything to clear the debris here that they say is a hazard to the neighborhood.
Desconsolado, triste, decepcionado, o sea, porque nuestras autoridades no hacen nada. 1 año, no puede ser.
For example, Magaña says he's concerned about an SUV that was crushed during the school collapse. He says he fears the gas tank may still be full and that it could explode.
Es triste porque ellos tienen una bomba de tiempo, tienen un vehículo que no saben si contenga o no contenga gasolina. Bueno, no se la han sacado y puede ser una bomba de tiempo, ¿no? Porque puede colapsar y puede llegar a explotar en cualquier minuto.
1 year later, they say the ruins of this school stands as a monument to poor construction and to a government that they say seems to be doing little to force contractors to build stronger, earthquake-proof buildings.
Y ese terreno lo van a agarrar como un monumento para la corrupción.
Perhaps the most iconic image of the 2017 quake was the image of rescue workers at this collapsed office building in the Condesa neighborhood of Mexico City at Alvaro Obregón 286. At least 48 people lost their lives here. Today, a construction worker allows us to walk the site, essentially under what was once a mountain of broken concrete, a tomb for the dead. Today, the bodies, long removed, and the rubble and debris mostly swept away. Also swept away, say local activists, may be the truth about what really happened here on the 19th of September 2017. The truth, they say, is that faulty construction of this building and government corruption that allowed it to happen is responsible for this building coming down, not just the earthquake. In fact, faulty construction here was recently confirmed by the Mexican government.
México está matando a la gente, no les importa. ¿Te das cuenta de la corrupción en la construcción cuando se caen los edificios? Se tiene que cambiar esto. Tenemos que cambiar ya la forma de pensar.
The Mexican government has not said whether anyone will ever be prosecuted for the construction here, but has pledged to build a monument here to those who died in the earthquake.
¡Viva México!
And Mexico's newly elected president has promised stronger and more urgent assistance for surviving earthquake victims. Construction workers today here began removing a barrier in front of the site that's been painted with several messages in the last year, among them that people who died on September 19, 2017 were not all killed by the earthquake alone, that corruption killed as well.